welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am your host, Jessica, and I'm here with an author who wrote a book about it's set in the 80s, right? And
Yep, 1982.
1982, and it takes place not too far from the library, which was interesting. But this is it is definitely like a sci-fi horror, environmental horror type story. Welcome, Ellery Adams. Tell us a little bit
Thank
about
you.
yourself. You're welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about invasive species.
Okay, well, I am a 20-year veteran of mystery novel writing. So this is a pretty big departure for me, but it's definitely one that I have always wanted to do because I've always wanted to write a book about the stuff I loved when I was a teen, which is folklore, mythology. I was a big Stephen King fan, loved horror. Um, So I'm kind of going down a different road, but I'm doing both. I'm still writing the mysteries, and I'm also going to be writing these, they kind of call them genre blending books because this is like suburban drama meets folklore, meets mythology, meets what they call cozy horror. Now, I gotta say, I don't think all of it is cozy. Um, I kind of see it as like a book that has heart, but also has plenty of teeth. So I'm originally from Long Island. I was born in Huntington Hospital. I grew up in Centerport. So the town that I use in the book, Cold Harbor, that is Centerport. And it's really about these women who are really under pressure to do it all. I mean, not that that doesn't happen now. But the 80s was kind of this time where like we saw all these commercials and advertisements, everything, and it was like, you can have it all, you can do it all. But at what price, right? So what happens is in their kind of obsession with fulfilling their ambitions and trying to be perfect and great and successful, they kind of unravel. And because they're so self-absorbed, they don't realize that one of their neighbors is literally a monster and is preying on their children because they got too much stuff going on.
So it is told in a few different points of view. There's Mrs. Smith, who's the monster. There's Jill, who is one of the children. And then there is Natalie, who is Jill's mom. And it rotates around some POVs. And it really sort of, yeah, it skirts the line between suburban drama and horror as well. Um, you mentioned that you love mythology, and Jill also in the book, she really loves mythology and she knows all of this stuff, and she's kind of trying to find where she belongs. I mean, she obviously wants to impress the cool kids, but she at her heart, she loves these stories. Oh, and there's also Una. I almost forgot Una, who is a housekeeper who works for a few different families, who's also suspicious of what's going on. So, in terms of the mythology aspect of it, did it come from something you'd read, or did you kind of set out to piece together a few of your favorites?
Well, I was actually looking to create a monster that hadn't been created before. And this was like a great excuse to read a bunch of myths from all over the world, which I still love. Jill is very much me. It's a very autobiographical book, actually, except for the deaths. Those did not happen, but much of the other stuff in the book did happen. It was very much what it was like to grow up on Long Island in the North Shore in 1982. Um, for my particular street. But as I started researching, I started realizing that there were multiple cultures. We're talking from Japan, Africa, Northern Russia, and Middle East, biblical, and even before that, the Hittites, who all had these ugly women who were in the water and had like snake-like tails or appendages. So not on the head like Medusa. Medusa came after these other creatures. And what they did was they lured humans into the water and ate them. And specifically, several of them lured children in and ate them. So I was like, it's kind of weird that cultures as far away from each other as like Japan and the Middle East had these female monsters that ate children. And like, I've never read a book about a woman like that before. So I feel like she has been around in culture and just kind of hasn't made it to the surface. And I wanted to bring her forth because she's in the Bible. She's in all of these myths. And I just kind of gave her a different name.
And the surrounding cast. I'm trying now, I'm like thinking, I don't know if it hit me specifically. Everybody who's got a POV is a woman or a girl
Hmm.
in the book.
Yep.
Um, it's it's sort of interesting because you see everybody's take on Mrs. Smith, who's the monster. Um, that's the name that she uses at least in the book, but you only get like what the men think about her through their eyes. Um, when you were writing it and you decided to write from multiple points of view, had you ever decided or had you ever thought you might include one of the guys' perspectives, or was it always like, no, this
Yeah,
is
no, they
definitely a
were they
female
were
story?
never going to have a voice. This
Yeah.
was going to be all women all the way because I really wanted to explore like how pressure can make women change and also that historically female monsters are basically women who have been punished for either being too powerful or too angry or too independent. You know, historically, they were either like really beautiful and used their beauty as a curse, or they were really evil and used their power as a curse. So many, 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 many monsters going back through time have female pronouns, and that's always a negativity. And so I kind of wanted to show, like, hey, there's a reason why some women are angry, and there's a reason why some women want to be isolated, and there's a reason why they get angry and want to do things to other people. And so this was really kind of looking at women dealing with pressure. And in Mrs. Smith's case, she is just basically an animal. So she is who she is. It's like saying, well, can you really blame a cat for killing a mouse? It's who they are. So,
Definitely, although she does enjoy it. Not to say,
yeah,
yeah, she definitely plays with her food a bit, and certainly enjoys it. Um, but you really, like I was a kid during that time period, but you really like capture just the whole idea and the whole like feeling of Long Island in the 80s. You have Natalie's friend Elaine who is having like this ridiculously over the top bar mitzvah for
ridiculous bar mitzvah.
yeah,
Yeah.
which like for her son, which like it's like she wants to kind of leverage that for his popularity because he and for theirs is for their notoriety as well, but for his popularity because he's a bit of an awkward kid,
Yeah.
um, and you have which was huge by the way. Like if you're reading the book and you're like, "There's no way," I can tell you right now that was pretty
Yes.
pretty
I went to a
pervasive.
few myself, and then it was also the time period. I don't know if this was true for you, but like there were crazy Sweet 16s too.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
I went to
people were
less.
spending money on that like we would spend on a wedding now.
Yeah.
Like this was big money.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't say that I went, and maybe it was again, there were people who definitely probably had crazy sweet 16s, but it wasn't like, like with the bar and bat mitzvahs, this Syosset in particular had at the time, had a very not heavily conservative, but practicing Jewish community. But there was a lot of that suburban keeping up with the, not the Joneses, but you know what I mean.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they would like these parties were nuts. And I remember I did not opt to have a bat mitzvah. I was not, and I didn't have the party, obviously. But I do remember like every weekend it
Yeah.
was like these elaborate scenes where the girls would like have to have a different dress every single day, every single party.
Right.
And they got the hair was all done up and they had backup dancers walk in, and the guys too,
Yeah, the
honestly.
entrance was a big
The
deal. The
entrance was it's
entrance.
like a wedding.
Yeah.
The entrance was a big deal.
Yep.
Like with guys and girls. So, like I was like reading that and I'm like, oh my God, although man, like some of the like their party favors were way over the top. Like I
Oh
don't
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Those were pretty
yeah,
ridiculous.
I'm like,
But
I don't
I
know.
did go to one and I can't name who they were because they're a fairly famous family where like my jaw just dropped because I'd never seen anything like that. And the party favors they were giving out, and there was like magician, and there was like a champagne fountain and a chocolate fountain. I'd never even seen any of that
Oh,
stuff before.
100%. So,
Yeah,
when I'm like reading about this, I'm like, oh, totally. This is a
right.
hundred
This takes me
percent.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this takes me back. But, you also, again, like you have like, you have the drama. And it's like you have like the three suburban women. You have Elaine, you have Natalie, who's the one we have a POV of, and then you have Beth, who's like she like very much prides herself and takes a lot of pride in her physical appearance and how her husband desires her. But, she really wants to be a mother, and that's the thing that's not working for her.
right,
And then, you see this, I suppose, reclusive, beautiful woman, in a mansion through their eyes who, like they see her as a abnormality. They see her as a seductress. And it all sort of serves her purpose, I think. I think really only like Jill, who's a child, kind of begins to see through to what she really is, and Una, who has her own experiences. But it was all very interesting. And I liked, Natalie's side story. Jill's mother was that she's trying to strike out on her own and be a working woman. And she gets a job as a real estate agent, and she has to sell the house next to Mrs. Smith's. So, like, when you were thinking about what Natalie was going to do, was real estate agent just was it like the natural fit for her?
well, that's what my mom did. So she had a science math background, and when she first got out of college, she worked at a science lab. And then three kids later, it was kind of like so many women go through this after they've had kids and they go to get a job. People are like, well, what's your experience? And you're kind of like, I could manage a small country. I just raised three kids. But that doesn't translate on paper, right? You know, what they see on paper is that you had this one job 15 years ago and now you're a homemaker. You know, that would have been the term they would have used then. It wasn't stay-at-home mom, it was homemaker. And so there weren't that many careers that a woman who had stayed home raising kids could go into other than secretarial, nursing, teaching, the ones that had kind of always been around for women. So the 80s was when women started going into other careers that were not open to them before. And my mom knew that she could do real estate agent and still kind of manage us because we were older. And she had me to kind of like help look after my brother. And that was just all of a sudden you saw all these women going into real estate because it was open to them. You know, they could get a license and they could start practicing right away, boom, boom, boom. And, pretty much all the stories I made up in there about the real estate situations were made up, but I'm sure there was plenty of in-house drama between people at every real estate agent because you're all vying for kind of like the top commissions and the good houses. Natalie gets stuck with the worst listing because she's the baby agent and she has to prove it herself. And of course, there's some ageism. She's going to be one of the older people coming on, and she's an older woman, so she doesn't have that young vitality that her boss is like excited about. So she gets dumped with the worst listing, and she's got to sell it, or she will not be hired as a full-time agent. So there's a lot of pressure on her, and it is a dump.
And it is literally right next to the monster's house.
Right.
And Charles's bar mitzvah is also on the monster's property and needs all permissions to go through that too. What about Una? She was a really interesting addition to the neighborhood.
Yeah, so Una is Icelandic, and the great thing about Iceland is that folklore and a history of monsters really is such a huge part of their culture. I mean, it's a giant island, and for hundreds and hundreds of years, they relied on fishing. They still rely on fishing. So you could pick up a book of Icelandic monsters and it's this fat. And there's a couple of ones on land, like a dragon here and trolls and some elves. But sea monsters, they've got like 500, all with names I can't pronounce because they're like this long, have lots of syllables. Um, and actually, they actually have a sea monster museum in Iceland, which I think is super cool. They also have a penis museum. So I don't know. They're like their museums. They're very unique. Um, so we had a woman who would watch us when my parents went away for business trips, and she was from Iceland. And she was just like gentle and beautiful, a very kind of fairy godmother-like figure. My parents were typical New Yorkers. When they were mad at you, they would yell, you know. Our house could get loud. She was always very quiet and calm and gentle, so kind of not like anybody we'd ever met. And I figured that somebody who came from that background might believe a child who says, I think something's wrong with that woman next door. None of the other adults are going to believe it. I mean, it's not logical. They're absolutely not going to believe it. But somebody from Iceland might.
I liked not that it felt derivative at all, but there were touches of Jaws. It felt like here and there in the story. I'm
Yeah.
assuming you made those nods very
Yeah, because
knowingly.
Jaws traumatized me so badly. I mean, I I've seen the movie 100 times. I know the shark is fake. I still understand why, if you invite me on a boat and say, let's go water skiing or like, let's jump in and snorkel, I'm going to say, hell no, I am not getting in there. I don't know what's down there. I was raised with Jaws and Jaws 2. Thank you very much. Oh, and Orca. I'm not going in. So, like,
Yeah.
my parents pretty much let us read whatever we wanted to. If it came from the library, they never looked. Like, everything at the library was safe, no problem. But movies, they were kind of like, well, you need to see it with us at least, or which was fine. Or we could watch like creature features on Saturday morning because they were usually like PG. We watched a ton of Godzilla movies. But Jaws, like, we snuck into and we paid the price. Like, we were punished without being punished. No worries.
Um, so this was a great book, as I mentioned. Are you working? So you mentioned that you're sticking with mystery. Are you going to be working on anything similar to this, or anything in this
Yes, so
genre
I
is
just
again?
turned in my second kind of genre blend darker novel, and this one's going to be set on Shelter Island. So I'm still staying in the Long Island area. There's such great history there. It just works well for this kind of drama with folklore and horror. And it's actually based on the witch trial we had on Long Island with Goody Garlic.
Yeah,
And
it's so interesting because we don't hear about that like
right?
ever.
We don't
And
ever hear
to
about
be
it.
honest, the first time I ever heard about it, and it's funny because like that's like right up my alley. Like that's stuff that I would normally hear about and be like, oh, this is part of Long Island folklore.
Yeah,
Yeah, was the first time I heard about it was they were having one of those like Rise of the Jack-o'-lantern or Blaze of the Jack-o'-lantern. I can't remember which one, but it was at for those who don't know, Old Bethpage Restoration Village, which is a place nearby where they transplanted a whole bunch of old houses and made a village. And they take kids there on school trips, and you learn how to churn butter. But they used to do a jack-o'-lantern event there, and they had one of the houses dedicated to that, and they explained the witch trials on Long Island. And it's just so weird to me that you hear about, Amityville, which, I mean, it had like a horrific crime that actually took place there, but
right.
everything we hear about Amityville is all falsified, by the man who wrote that book. Not we don't hear about the DeFeos. But like I'm like, why do we hear these stories? We hear about that. We hear about, Mary's grave, which is another Long Island legend. Why do we not hear about like the actual history of this thing that happened?
Yeah, and I think my theory is that because she was found not guilty and she wasn't hung or anything like this, like people just let it go. But I was like, I want to write about this, but not, I don't want to call her Goody Garlic. Um, and so what I thought is I would do this weird twist and be like, well, what if she was pronounced not guilty, but she actually is guilty and she actually is a witch? And then we've got Stony Brook College. I'm going to fictionalize Stony Brook College and call it Mary Brook. And I'm going to have four friends who went to Mary Brook College and they're going to a college reunion on Shelter Island. And there they are going to encounter the spirit, a negative spirit of this witch who was pronounced not guilty, but then went to go on and do some dastardly things. So,
Very interesting.
and I'm going to pull in a lot of history from Shelter Island because Shelter Island has a pretty dark and tumultuous history without me having to make up anything.
Very cool. I look forward to it. Are you touring around the area at all?
I am. I'm coming back to Long Island for the first time in over 20 years for the Gold Coast Book Festival.
I hope to see you there.
Yeah, I'm going to be Saturday at 2 p.m. I have a panel someplace in Oyster Bay. So,
Very nice. Well, I would love to see you there. If you're in the area, come check it out. Once again, this was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My guest was,
Ellery Adams, thanks everybody. Happy reading.
and we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.